G'day and welcome. This is Adam from AVA Magnetic Levitation Australia, doing another Mad Micro RC Mods video. This video is the Tech Talk, or the Little Red's Big Overhaul. This little car featured in the video I did recently called On the Limit Part 1. I also released On the Limit Part 2. It isn't quite getting the same views, even though it's got the Planktrico cars in it, so maybe have a look at that one. Basically, I showed this car driving after I did modifications to it. In this video I'm going to show you how I did the modifications and basically show the precautions and some of the pros and cons so you can do it yourself. Before we start though, I'll just quickly do two things. The first thing we're going to cover or look at is the stuff in the background. I'm trying to include things in the background which will feature in videos very soon, stuff that's been worked on. There's the Revell boat, which I've actually started the work on now after a very long time. There's a Coke Can Car, which I got from Hobby King. Keep in mind, Hobby King does not sponsor me or give me any discounts or anything like that yet. It'd be nice if they did. They got some pretty cool stuff really cheap. That's the main reason I'm just showing their stuff, because some of it is really cheap and you don't have any worries about it not arriving like other online stuff sometimes. This car was $6. It's a 164. I'm going to turn it into a 2-cell, and at the moment I'm looking towards the 2,000 subscriber giveaway. This might be the car that I might give away. The other one I've got at the moment is this thing. Oops. This is a another, well, they're both WL Toys ones, which are a bit of a surprise to me. This is of the same scale, and yeah, there we go, 164. Yeah, it's a truck. It's a little slow. It tips over if you turn hard on a good surface because it's got all this crap on the top of it. I'm going to modify it. I'm going to strip it down, turn it into a ute, as we say in Australia, or a flat tray truck, I suppose more like it because of the cabin. And I'm going to make it so that you can get S1 batteries and actually plug them into the back of the cabin and lay them in the tray. I'll also install a bigger motor, bigger wheels, and may play with the gear ratios as well. So I'm going to make this thing go really fast. I'll do wheel stands and sort of give the option of being able to actually just pull in and pull out batteries as you please. So I'm not sure which is going to be the 2,000 subscriber giveaway car yet, but now, how am I going to pick the 2,000 subscriber draw? Well, I got a little bored more recently and had a lot of trouble sleeping, which is not uncommon for me. And I actually did a challenge on myself where I got this car, but it had this body kit on it, and I built a trailer for it. Put on a 600 milliamp hour lithium ion graphene battery, nanotech, and I did an endurance drive. Unfortunately, I rolled the car somewhere around 40 something minutes in. So I ended the challenge at that point, but the battery was still half full. So I won't go into too much detail about what happened because I've got a video coming out for the endurance drive, but I will say I got more than 2 kilometres out of the car, which is more than 2,000 metres. When I do the next video with this car, which is now looking a little bit Mad Max, there may be interference run to slow the car down. There may be some other challenges thrown in the mix while I'm trying to drive it. But I intend to charge the battery back up and run the car on a distance challenge. And what I'll do is the person who guesses closest to the distance the car gets will win the 2,000 subscriber draw. But this is the car now. I got very bored and changed the car somewhat a little bit. I think it looks much nicer now than it did previously, and yeah, it's a little bit fun to drive. Drive it on a 10 metre track, so basically every lap is 10 metres. It's an easy way to work out how many kilometres I've done. So that's enough of that. Now, before we do the lithium ion installation into this car, I must quickly go over some safety for lithium ion batteries. Now, what I tend to do is put the lithium ion batteries in the cars, but one thing to keep in mind, once you put a lithium ion battery in one of these cars, you can no longer charge it with this controller anymore because they're a different charging cycle. So what I tend to do is I cut this off and I make up an adapter which either suits a charging system I have. Currently I'm charging all these little cars up off an old 9 Eagles receiver or transmitter, which as you can see I've made up an adapter out of a 9 Eagles battery and just put it on. I can basically just plug this into the car like that, and then plug the other end into the back of the 9 Eagles charging socket, which is up there. We're not going to go through that right now. The other thing to be a little cautious of with lithium-ion batteries is they have an operating voltage. They generally, at full charge, will be around 4.2 volts. When you discharge them and run them, you really just want to run them down to say 3.8, 3.5 absolute minimum. You don't want to take it much further. A lot of the recharging systems for these batteries, if it's say 2 volts or something and you put this battery into charge, it will not charge. The system automatically assumes the battery's been overly discharged, it is now damaged, and it will not charge it or activate a charge cycle. So, how do you know how many volts you've done? Well, when you're driving the car, after you've done an installation, it's best to run it for say 5 minutes, check the voltage, run it for another 5 minutes, check the voltage, and just see what's going on. You'll notice a slight drop in power, and generally when that happens when you're driving the car, you've hit that 3.8, 3.7 volt sort of limit. So, you know, the car will teach you. You'll learn pretty quick. Keep in mind, you put, say, you know, a 130 in, like I have in one of these cars, the thing will run for like 15, 18 minutes maybe before you have to recharge it. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. Now, there's a quick section which I'll show you now, which is finding the polarity of a battery. Some of these batteries don't actually have a negative or a positive marked on it, so I'll just show you with the voltmeter how to do that. Okay, lithium-ion battery safety precaution. A lot of the lithium-ion batteries that you'll use to do these mods won't actually have a negative and a positive marked on them. So you've got to work out which polarity is which, or which is the negative and which is the positive. Best way to do that is just get a multimeter, set it to voltage, your red and your black lead, touch them on, look at your meter. If you get a negative, that means the leads are back to front. Swap the leads around. Confirm the polarity. So put the leads back on again in the opposite direction and we get a positive reading. And what I tend to do then is, after I've confirmed that the one on the right here, that's the negative, the one on the left is the positive, I'll tend to mark the battery. So I know that this side is negative. I always get a texture and I put a black line or I put a red line on the positive side. Just so when I'm doing the hookup and soldering, I don't actually have any little accidents. I've done it once. It wasn't my board that I blew up. Sorry, Dan. I don't want to do it again. It's not a good idea because you can actually set a fire when you do it. You get sparks, the board will blow up a little bit, it'll shoot out a component, or the battery may fry up. So, lithium-ion batteries, they're great, they're much more energy in a much smaller area. You have to be a little bit cautious of that. If they go wrong a lot faster. They don't go wrong unless you get it wrong. Okay, time for a little micro RC surgery. This is the 168 or 164, I think it's a 168 Revell Coke Can Car. You can see it's a little bit smaller than a standard Coke Can car. Basically it has all the same internals, it's just packed into a smaller area. So I've got to change the battery cell in this one, and I'd like to change the motor as well. So this one, strangely enough, has 2 retaining screws. It doesn't clip in at the front like your normal ones. Should just pop out. Now I may have to cut, oh no, I might get it out. No, I'm going to have to get that off. Because this was given to a child and I didn't want him to poke himself in the eye. I also put it on there because the person I gave it to, and I also have cats, and they tend to like these cars a lot, and I didn't want the cats to accidentally poke themselves in the eye, so a little bit of heat trick on the end just keeps it safe, they can see it better. So basically, yep, that's the car stripped down. Now I'll have a really quick close-up look inside it. It's a bit of a tangled looking mess when you first open them up, but don't be intimidated if you intend to do work on them. What we've got here is most of these wires you see running all over back and forward is for the lighting. So just ignore all that from start. To get to the motor, you've got to undo this screw here, take the aerial off, and then you've got to undo this screw here, which is your motor retainer. The battery here, I don't know if that's got a retainer in it or not. Just rotate it around and have a look. No, it looks like the gearbox itself holds the battery down. Remove the aerial. might try and pull it from the front. Yep, there we go. Okay. So the motor, gearbox and all the arse end and everything, it's got a clip hanging on. There. Basically it's all one little unit like that. That's a drive shaft. Oh, there we go. Now this may be the reason why it slowed down and died in the end. I'll just do a close up on that. It's sort of humorous. So this is a Revell Coke Can Car after about 4.5 to 5 years. It's all the carpet fluff and that inside there jamming up the wheel and the gears. So it'll have to be cleaned out. And also this is the compound gear. We've got lots of muck inside the gears. You can just scrape it out. Basically you can always just get something in there like tweezers with a fine point and remove the material. Let's back up a bit. You can actually take that whole rear axle right out of the car. So this will all be cleaned off, and I'll put a little bit of lubricant. You can buy specialised greases for this sort of thing, or you can just use something like Vaseline. Assuming you just push the motor backwards this way, it should just come out. There we go. So this one's a different car. I don't know if there's many of them around. So that's the motor freed up. Now I've got the option of soldering directly, which is what I'd like to do, but there's not a lot of room in there and I'd have to lift the board and that. I'd rather just do it the easy way. So I will just cut this. I know it's red is positive, blue is negative. Away we go. That's the motor done. And pinion. Simple. Just pull it off. Simple as that. Now the battery, we've got to do the same thing with this. We've got to get this out and reconnect, remove or expose the wires that we require. Okay, so I've got another one of these jobbies. Because they run a switch as well as a, let's see, we've got a switch and a charging point. We tend to have multiple wires running in. So I've got negatives together there, and we've got our positives together there. So our positives at the moment are green and red, and our negatives are black, of course. So what I tend to do is desolder these, twist them together into one, resolder them together so they're one unit, or, you know, 2 wires to 1, 2 wires to 1, and then when you resolder to your lithium ion battery, you basically just solder the 2 wires straight to the negative and positive points on the lithium and you're done. As simple as that. Motor selection. We find the motors that these Coke Can cars use are these tiny little 6x12 cordless brush motors. They have a shaft on them that's normally a little bit too long than what you need, but you can always just cut that back. Basically they run around 50,000 RPM. This one from Micro Wings, 6x12. There we go. I think this thing cost like $3 or $4. I think this one from memory was around 60,000 RPM. Now I've selected a new motor of exactly the same size. The shaft just happened to be the right size. If it isn't, you can always just snip them off and then just lightly file them back, the burrs off. I've basically done nothing to the wire ends. Most motor wires come tinned like this, ready to go. I've just put 7mm of heat shrink tubing on each wire as pre-prep. I've stripped the wires on the Coke Can Car, as you saw a little bit further back, and I'm ready to go. All I have to do now pretty much is just basically merge the wires together. So basically it's an old-fashioned twist and solder. So the motor can just be reinstalled back into its barrel, and that's it. As far as I'm aware, that should be good to go. Make sure we got clearance on the pinion. Yep, that's it. That's our motor swap done. So I've got to strip these 2 wires off, positives. I'll be able to keep them together, and then we need to strip our blacks off and negatives. Okay, what I've done so far is I've basically connected the motor up, connected extra length leads to where the battery went. I've put the charge socket back in place, I've put the motor back into its little barrel. I'm about to reassemble the gearbox assembly and the rear axle and everything, so I can clip all that back down, and then all I'll be left to mess with is basically 2 wires and a battery fit, which is the easy part generally. Lubrication. For these sorts of things, I mean, realistically for what they do, most of the time, you can basically just use some sort of a Vaseline type, you know, grease or whatever it is, and it'll be fine. You don't need to go overboard, you don't need to do the gears a lot, mainly just the running pins. Areas where anything's spinning or running. If you do over lubricate or lubricate the gears and do it too much, what you'll find is that the car will actually go slower. So it's mainly just the shafts that they're on. Now I don't know which way this pin and this goes, so I'm just basically sort of doing it as I go and chatting and hoping I find out along the way. Before you notice, I don't know what I'm doing yet. So all I'm doing is just greasing these axle points. Now it's just metal on plastic basically, so you want something in there. So all I'm doing is just leaving a little bit of grease in there. So the rear axle can go back in. I've cleaned all the gears off and everything. Just drops in there. Now the normal Coke Can cars aren't normally this complex. This is a Revell Coke. It's a little bit better. Look at that. I've never seen that before. The pin extends all the way out, and it's got like a rest on this side. I didn't put this in as a mod. This is stock as a rock. That's how it comes. And theoretically, I should be able to just put my gearbox straight over the top. Yeah, looking at that, we're all lined up. Should be able to just clip that in. Oops. Carefully clip that in place. Nothing moves. Oh, there we go. Yep. Now there's a screw to put back in. If you have any troubles when you're putting screws up near these motors, just magnetise your screwdriver. And yeah, a little trick. Let's go backwards first. Either click and then go forwards. That way you line your threads up. This is plastic. It's got a thread in plastic which isn't that strong. It's strong enough with the bolts or the screws in there, but it's not when you're trying to get it in there. So go backwards first, feel the click, find your position or your thread lines up, and then go clockwise and wind it down. That's it. That's the whole rear end done. New motor. Hopefully higher RPMs, more speed. And I mean, these motors work on normally 3 volts and 2 volts and stuff like that, so you know, your battery stock standard is 1.2, 1.5 volts, a lithium ion's like 3.84 volts. You do the maths, more volts, more RPMs, I mean, these things can be uncontrollable if you go too far without doing other mods. That's half the fun. So that's it. All I have to do now is try and work out how and where I'm going to fit that battery in. I've noticed one advantage already. Sorry, still have a cold. If you can see this little plastic tab just here, well, you can see that that was there to hold the battery, and I can hack that off, and that gives me more room to lay the battery over the top. Batteries at the moment that we're going to possibly try and fit. I've got these 3 to go. There's a 50 milliamp hour, and that looks like it's probably going to be the right fit. I should be able to set it up. Yeah, it shouldn't interfere. It's not very long either, so I can even just chuck it in there somewhere on top of the board. Probably end up going with something like. Unfortunately, I lost a little bit of video footage, so I can't actually show soldering the battery back on. But what I will do now is just unscrew the car and show you what the final installation looked like. This is after it's been driven, basically in the video on the limit. If you want to see this car in action, just look up on the limit. Should be a link on the screen now, hopefully. Also, there'll be a link in the description. It was actually quite a surprise. I'll just pop this back. I won't pull it all the way off because I've got the little bit of heat shrink on the aerial for child and cat safety. But yeah, basically that's what we ended up with. So close up. Yeah, that was it. All I did is connected those two wires up to the lithium ion battery and squeezed it back down into the body kit, and yeah, that was it. It just sits there nicely. The body kit holds it in place, everything's insulated, but I have done a few of these before, and generally you find that as long as you follow the basic rules of electronics and wiring and soldering and insulation, you'll have no problems. It's not hard, anyone can do it. So there you go, that's Little Red's big overhaul. Hope you enjoyed or learnt something from watching. The intention of these videos is mainly just to share the fun, so I hope I have. Groovy. Speed it up. It's starting to